Ole Miss can take its place with the national elite with a win over the Georgia Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Thanks for joining us today. Today on the show, we'll talk about a corner game for the Ole Miss Rebels. The game is with the Georgia Bulldogs in Oxford. Make no mistake, Georgia is going to come into Oxford with the best roster in the country, but if Ole Miss can pull out this game, that FanDuel has them at about a touchdown underdog, it will completely change the complexion of the Ole Miss football program. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. July 2nd, it's coming up here pretty quick in a couple of weeks. You can join us at Walk-Ons in Ridgeland, Mississippi for a meet and greet. It is sure to be a lot of fun, and the Loon community can meet up and grow, and all of that stuff is going to be really informal, but it would be really nice to see some people that watch the show. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football be elite. You can go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so we are on vacation this week, but I did want some shows. I wanted some content for everybody. Everybody knows that I enjoy doing this. I like doing the work, all of that stuff. So I did want to put some stuff out, but I am out this week. And this week, you're going to get 3 Locked On Ole Miss podcasts of the main podcast on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're going to supplement that with an interview with Max Chadwick on Tuesday. We're going to do the top 5 on Thursday. And then Saturday, we're going to have Michael Katz. And Sunday, we're going to have Spencer McLaughlin. So there's going to be Ole Miss content every single day. But it's going to look a little bit different. And I know you're used to getting 2 shows per day and all of that stuff, but just bear with us, be patient. I haven't taken time off since I started doing this. So I need to take 2 out of the next 3 weeks off just to recharge, because this football season is potentially the most anticipated in the history of Ole Miss football. And we all want to be around for that. So it should be pretty interesting for Ole Miss fans and everybody over the next couple of months. And the biggest game that is headlining the schedule is just like the bright light that is on the schedule is the game with the Georgia Bulldogs on November 9th. Ole Miss right now is just about a touchdown underdog to the Georgia Bulldogs. And make no mistake, Georgia is going to come into Oxford with the best roster in all of the country. So you're going to need a little bit of help to win this game, but you can win this game. This is a game that Ole Miss has gotten in the past. This is not a weird thing for Ole Miss to get this. They can get it. And a year ago, they got blown out in Athens. It was like 52-17. It was not pretty overall. Ole Miss kind of fell victim, honestly, to Kirby Smart having 8 years to steam over getting absolutely blown out in Oxford in 2016. And I think he took that out on Ole Miss a little bit. That's the last time Ole Miss played Georgia. And also, Ole Miss was good last year. So he didn't have to pump up his team too overly much to get their attention. And Georgia played a really good game. It was the first night game that Georgia has played in, I don't know, all season, I think. And Ole Miss just kind of ran into a buzzsaw that night. But that doesn't change the fact that Ole Miss football was really good last year. They won 11 games. That doesn't change the fact that Georgia probably should have been the national champion last year. We'll talk about that at some other point. But Ole Miss this season, they're faced with a corner game. And what is a corner game? A corner game is when you come up to it and you can see the corner. If you win it, you will turn it. And Ole Miss can take its position with the nation's elite with the win over the Georgia Bulldogs. And that is assuming, of course, that Ole Miss takes care of business ahead of time. And honestly, Georgia takes care of business ahead of time as well, because Georgia's schedule is not easy. It is not an easy schedule for the Georgia Bulldogs, with road games at Texas and at Alabama to match with at Ole Miss. Georgia could go 9-3 and be the best team in the country this season. Their schedule is just brutal. But Ole Miss winning this game, it doesn't matter necessarily, but if Ole Miss wins this game, it can answer so many questions. And we'll talk about that over the course of this episode, about things that Ole Miss can get out of winning this football game. But Georgia is going to come in with the best roster in the country. They are. They're probably going to come in as the number one team in the country, and they should be. Carson Beck and all of those guys offensively. There's a chance, I think I was at the Under Armour All-American game, either last year or the year before, and they said that this year was going to be earmarked for the year that Georgia has all top 100 players playing defense. Think about that. All top 100 players playing on that side of the ball. Georgia's going to be a test. They're going to be the best roster in the country. Honestly, if you want to view this as almost a Major League Baseball type thing, Georgia's not Major League. They're not that. But if you think about the minor league system of college athletics and college baseball, they always compare college baseball to like AA level. Georgia is not AA level either. They're probably closer to AAA than AA. Their roster is absolutely stacked. And because of that, all of this is going to come in with the reputation that Georgia has, with Georgia being the best team in the country. It has a chance to be at the level of 2014 Alabama, if everybody remembers that. That was probably the last time Ole Miss had a corner game, and Ole Miss turned that corner. The next year they were in the Sugar Bowl. Now this program is in a completely different place, and a lot of that has to do with that 2014 game. This is the next corner game. Really interesting stuff. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. This game has a chance to be the game of the year in the SEC if Georgia and Ole Miss handles business. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you with the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you find professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those that aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other job sites. So if you're not looking in LinkedIn, you're honestly looking in the wrong place. So on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professionals on LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, news, opinions, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we talked about what this could mean for Ole Miss as a program, as it's being a corner type game between the Ole Miss Rebels and the Georgia Bulldogs. But it's more than that even still. It has a real chance to be the game of the year in the Southeastern Conference this year. This is the first year of the expanded playoff, new TV contract. Everybody's going to care about what's going on. But Ole Miss and Georgia has a chance to be what Alabama and LSU was in the SEC in years past. And it's not because Ole Miss is special. It's not because Georgia's special. It's because that both of these teams are very talented and very opposite centric. Now, Georgia is always going to be built on defense. They're always going to have a great defense. You have Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann and all those guys on the defensive side of the ball, and Georgia does a really good job on that side. Don't hear me say anything about them in a negative way. They do a really good job. But Lane Kiffin in the offense does a good job as well. And this year, you're going to have a situation to where there's some really good players on the Ole Miss side of the ball. If you're a Georgia fan watching this show, Ole Miss potentially has the best wide receiver unit in all of the country. Now, whether you ask PFF or Lindy's or Athlons, it might be Oregon, it might be Ohio State, but Ole Miss is always really high up there on the list as well. So it's kind of like, hey, this is an interchangeable list. So the best wide receiver group in the country, in my opinion, is Ole Miss. And it starts with Trey Harris. Trey Harris is a guy that a year ago, Ole Miss lost a road game at Alabama. If Trey Harris is healthy, I think Ole Miss might have won that football game. And Ole Miss might have ended up going into the Georgia game undefeated last season, all because of an injury to Trey Harris. Trey Harris is potentially the best wide receiver in all of college football, and Alabama got a gift, him being injured in that football game, because Ole Miss defensively was doing a little bit of work. Now, Trey Harris, obviously best wide receiver in college football, and everybody knows about Jackson Dart. Everybody knows what he does. 233, 358, 3,364 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The reason his touchdowns weren't as high as they could have been is honestly because some little bitty wide receivers were two of the three, essentially, when you had Dayton Wade and Jordan Watkins. But this year, they're adding Deion Smith, the junior college wide receiver of the year, into the fold. And that's somebody that is going to take double teams off of Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris can win one-on-one against absolutely everybody. Deion Smith is going to allow him to do that because you're not going to be able to double team that side of the field and leave this one open because of how explosive he is. And in the slot, it gets really interesting for Ole Miss. It really starts with Juice Wells coming in, and he was last season the top wide receiver in the Southeastern Conference coming in, and then he got injured, ended up transferring to Ole Miss. So he joins Trey Harris, and he's sitting right beside Mr. Reliable and Jordan Watkins. Jordan Watkins played last year with a broken hand. You can see what I'm talking about. There's a lot of offensive weapons. When you look at running back, Ulysses Bentley IV, Henry Parrish Jr., Rashawn Amos, all of that is in a situation to where this offense could be the most dynamic that Lane Kiffin has ever had at Ole Miss. Georgia's defense, all top 100 players. You can see why this is a irresistible force versus immovable object type game between Ole Miss and Georgia, which means as this season goes, if everybody takes care of business and they don't get upset, like if Ole Miss doesn't slip up against Kentucky, or if Ole Miss gets through the test in Baton Rouge and Georgia gets through Texas and Oklahoma, all of a sudden this irresistible force and immovable objects will happen in the first couple of weeks in November and will be becoming the game of the year in the Southeastern Conference. I mean, Alabama and LSU sitting right there. I think that same exact week, if we're going to be honest about it. But this is a situation to where Ole Miss and Georgia has a chance to take the spotlight that normally is reserved for Ole Miss or for Alabama football, LSU football. This is a chance for Ole Miss to get in that conversation. Like I said in the first segment, I said this is a corner game. You want Ole Miss to get to a certain level, Ole Miss has to get through this game, okay? But also, if you want to look at the big picture of exactly how this game sits in the season, it has a chance to be absolutely monstrous. Absolutely monstrous. It's going to be a big deal to where the Grove and Oxford could look like it did in 2012 against Texas when there was 250,000 people in the town. The place will be an absolute zoo. The game is going to kick off on ABC. I still think it'll be the primetime game, potentially. I'm hopeful that it'll at least be the primetime game. But if it is the 2:30 game, that's okay as well. We have 10 years of history of making that time slot meaningful as far as the CBS game. The Ole Miss Alabama game was the 2:30 CBS game. Ole Miss played LSU multiple times at 2:30 on CBS. So we have seen what that time frame can look like. but this has a chance to feel and look like a mighty big game. We'll see exactly how it goes. Now, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, what is this going to look like if Ole Miss wins? What does Ole Miss get out of it if they beat the Georgia Bulldogs? We'll tell you about that next. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. Hey, you can bet on anything you want to bet on. Maybe you can bet on the Ole Miss Rebels over-under on wins, which currently is sitting at 9.5. Or maybe you're interested in Ole Miss being minus 122 to make the college football playoff. Maybe you want to bet on that. Or maybe you want to get granular and Jackson Dart being plus 1,500 to win the Heisman Trophy. Maybe that's your flavor. You can do all of that at FanDuel. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sports book. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. All right. What does it look like if Ole Miss wins this game? If Ole Miss beats Georgia on November 9th, what does it look like? And if Ole Miss took care of business throughout the season, one loss or no losses going into the Georgia game, what does it look like if you beat Georgia? Now, immediately after the Georgia game is a bye week, and then you have an early kickoff game in the Swamp against Florida, and then you have the Egg Bowl on Friday after Thanksgiving. Those are two very winnable football games that could look interesting at that time of year. But the Georgia Bulldogs game, that's kind of the ultimate for this season. It is. It's the headliner completely for this season. What does it look like if Ole Miss wins that game? Well, if Ole Miss is at 0-1 losses, they're probably in position to go to the SEC championship game at that point. You're probably a favorite to make it to Atlanta with a win over the Georgia Bulldogs if you take care of business in the other spots. Now, that includes winning in Fayetteville, which can be tricky. That includes beating Oklahoma, which will be tricky. That includes winning in the Swamp, which will be tricky. We did our trap shows a couple of episodes back. But if you beat Georgia, you're in the driver's seat to get to Atlanta in a game with probably either Texas or Alabama in that game. Although I do think personally it would be absolutely hilarious is in the first year of the college football playoff, it becomes Ole Miss versus Missouri in the SEC championship game. That would be, to me, the most hilarious thing ever. I almost want that so much it hurts. It just is what it is. But that's the road you're on. And then if you get to Atlanta, you're playing for a bye, one of the top 4 seeds, potentially the top seed in the entire college football playoff, because we can all admit that the champion of the SEC or the champion of the Big Ten, one of those two are going to be the top seeds in the playoff. You have a chance to wear a colored jersey all the way through the playoffs if you win against Georgia, because if you win the SEC championship, you're the #1 seed, you're wearing your home jersey. So whether powder blue or red or navy blue, it's all there. That is what's on the table if you take care of business and take care of Georgia. What does it mean for perception? I mean, recruiting will absolutely explode. That's about a month before signing day. Do you want Deuce Knight to really think about what's going on? Beat Georgia. Be in position to be the #1 seed in the entire college football playoff. Check the SEC championship. It's like I said all the time. This Ole Miss recruiting class this year is the equivalent of the one after Deshaun Watson and Hunter Renfrow and those guys at Clemson. It's the Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, that group. That is what is being built right now in this recruiting class at Ole Miss. Whether it be, Jerome Miles or Caleb Cunningham or Deuce Knight or any of those guys, a Kylan Deere, you can see how potentially this offense and everybody has a chance to be completely next level. So we will see exactly how that goes. If Ole Miss beats Georgia, it will take Ole Miss's football program to a level that we have not seen and nobody has seen if they're under the age of 60 years old. And I think everybody should celebrate that and look at what's going on. All right. So again, I'm on vacation this week. I'm going to do a Locked On Ole Miss podcast just like this one on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You're going to have Max Chadwick at 7 o'clock in the morning. On Tuesday, you're going to have my top 5 at 7 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. And then you're going to have Michael Katz from the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. And you're going to have Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football this weekend. So that is the vacation lineup. So I hope everybody enjoys that. And like I said, just please be patient. I have not had time off really since the Sugar Bowl that Matt Corral played in. I've been going during that time frame. And the reason we've been able to grow this is because of how much I've worked. But I do need to take a little bit of a break before this football season happens, because we have some dudes set up to kind of be analysts. DeMarcus Lodge said he would help us out. John Forcade said he would help us out. So this fall has a chance to be a lot of fun football-wise. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there, and thank you for that. This week's top 5 topic is still the top 5 head coaches in Ole Miss football history. You'll catch mine on Thursday. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Take care, everyone.